Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I just did a little bit of housekeeping around here to try to rearrange the positions of all the bins on my shelves. So I had a couple systems over here in the spot that's usually reserved for the oldest of my systems. They were just sitting there storing castings, which is something I don't like my bins doing. I want to put the castings into storage, free up the bins for, use as worm bin homes and composting systems, although you would have to question whether I really meant what I'm saying. When you look at how many unused bins I've got, I gotta kind of step up my game and really put these systems to use. But that means the one bin that we're working on today, which is the bin of the mixed red worms, the 56-day-old mixed red worms, is now over here, pretty close to being in the corner, shifted over from its previous location. And kind of weird. I don't know why. I just sort of went into my statistics and I noticed that the last video that we prepared for that system only had a 90% thumbs up. 27 versus 3. So out of 30, 3 of the reviews were thumbs down. And it made me wonder, I never see that. I never see thumbs down on I mean, I do, but never below 90. Not never, but I actually went back over 2 years. I went back 25 months looking for any other example of one of my worm farming videos getting anything under 90 or even 90. Not even one example. And that's like over 650 videos going back 25 months. I suppose I could have gone back further looking for another example of it, but something about that video we made last time feeding these little guys, for whatever reason, wasn't really received very well. And I don't even know, maybe I even prompted the viewers to respond with a thumbs down to something specific I said, but whatever. I just figured I would mention that because it did seem a little bit unusual, but let's get back to the matter at hand. Time to feed these little guys. Once again, 2 weeks have passed since the last check-in, and I think they're due. So let's get the system up on the bench and get to work. A lot of times I judge the amount of stuff that I'm giving the worms just by its weight. I don't know how else to do that, but if you think about it, a head of cabbage, a tomato, materials that are probably in large part moisture and water once they thaw out and they start breaking down. These moldy chunks of bread, not so much. I didn't realize how moldy these things were. It was a little bit dim when I put them in here. I didn't turn the lights on in the kitchen, but now I could see clearly. We got a little mold festival going on here on this bread. So this is what they're getting. And on that topic of judging things by their weight, this system just feels heavy. I wonder if that might have something to do with maybe a system that has perhaps more moisture in it than it needs. I don't know. Kind of made me question whether giving them that type of a meal with a likely large quantity of moisture content coming out of the food would be a mistake in here if it is in fact a system that's overly damp. But you know what? If you were to ask the worms what they think about a system that might be overly damp, I have a feeling that they're not going to balk at it too much. In fact, I would say that their initial response to it would probably be, yeah, we like the moisture, bring it on, give us more. But I do like to try to maintain a certain level of balance in my systems. So let's dig in. These mixed red worms, this is a population of worms that's thought to include 3 different species of worms, and that's the red wigglers, the European nightcrawlers, and the Indian blue worms. And of all my systems, I've got a number of European nightcrawler systems. I've got a number of red wiggler systems. This is the only system in which I have Indian blue worms. And they're the really skinny ones, the fast-moving skinny ones. Those are the ones that I believe are the Indian blue worms. I was just looking at another worm here, which I thought is probably a European nightcrawler because it doesn't seem to have that distinct yellow tail that a red wiggler would have. So I was just curious, I figured we would just go right to the bottom, which is where the majority of the moisture in the system would probably be. Although with that cardboard covering that we use that's wrapped in plastic, We are protecting this system quite nicely from drying out due to evaporation by having it covered that way. And I guess my only concern is that I would hate to see a system start to get really muddy and nasty as a result of that. So now in the past we've, done what I'm doing here, which is just to sort of lift up a portion of the system and take a peek underneath, because the way the system was built with all this twine and rope, it's not really possible to just dig a little hole somewhere, If you try to penetrate this material, you're immediately faced with a whole bunch of rope, stuff that you can't really dig through. So right in the middle, we did at one point excavate a little bit of a hole. We took that extra time to sort of push all the string and rope to the side and create ourselves a little cavity down in the middle. And that's where we've been putting the feedings. But I was starting to wonder if maybe from a bedding perspective, it might be a good idea to give them a little boost. So that's the reason I've peeled all this stuff back, because even before we add today's food, which will probably just go right down the middle, I assume, as it usually does, I want to put some stuff down here other than what's accumulating down here already, which is just castings. Because, castings have this tendency to clump together, especially if there's a lot of moisture going around. And I would really prefer if there was other stuff besides just castings accumulating there. Stuff for the worms to really utilize as a bedding. And yeah, the twine is certainly serving as their bedding material, as well as all the cardboard stuff that was used to build this bin. The rope and twine seem to take the spotlight all the time, but the other thing we used as bedding when we built this bin originally was a whole bunch of the type of cardboard that you see egg cartons made out of, or take home doggy bag type containers that they give you in a restaurant to bring home your leftovers and stuff. So I used a whole bunch of that type of cardboard when I built this system originally, and it just seemed to me like it might be a good idea to think a little bit about the bedding situation in here. So I think we'll do the same on this opposite edge. Okay, that was interesting, because I always expected, not always, but my expectation of this system was that for quite some time it would be such that I can just do what we did over here, which is grab a hunk of material and just kind of peel the whole thing back. I think I made an analogy or a comparison or whatever to this one time recently, referring to it as almost like a mattress. If you wanted to peek under your mattress and, see what's there, then you could simply grab a corner of it and the whole thing will lift up as a single object. And that was kind of the feeling I was getting with this system too, but eventually the rope and the twine will start to break down and it won't all be holding together anymore. It will allow for easy manipulation of the material so we can plow through the stuff. But for now, I figured let's just take advantage of the nature of this type of weird bedding that we used and just peel the whole thing back so that we can come in here with a little bit of extra bedding to maybe absorb a little bit of what might be excess moisture in the system. This is my prepared bedding, which is slightly dampened, but it's not too damp. I'm sure the material still has a fairly high potential for absorbing more moisture into itself. So that was just my little idea there for how to maybe ward off potential bad outcomes of castings getting too wet, starting to clump together, becoming unmanageable. So many of my systems are so nice and loose with the material flowing freely versus getting muddy and clumpy that I'd really like for that to be a trend in all my systems. But in this bin, it is a little bit weird with the types of materials that we've chosen to use. So I think we've taken care of some of the business I wanted to take care of there by adding a little bit of bedding materials with the intent of hopefully absorbing some of the moisture, which to me seems like it might be a little bit excessive in this system, and at the same time provide the wormies with a little bit of medium to call home and be a nice bedding for them to hang out in. You can see as soon as I try to pull some of this material aside, it doesn't go. It just drags the entire bin with it off to the side. Alright, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little distracted by this funny beeping noise that I keep hearing. It's the third time now that I've heard it, and I don't know what it is. Kind of sounds like a smoke alarm, smoke detector, maybe running low on its battery power. So I'll have to check if that's the case. I do have a smoke detector in the stairwell leading down here into my basement. So I think we're ready to start piling in their somewhat moist meal. But we're going to start out by throwing in some bedding material, some of my prepared bedding. There it goes again. I don't know if you can hear it in the background there. But I'm going to have to go check what the heck's making that noise at this point. Wouldn't want to have a smoke detector that doesn't have the power it needs to do the job it's required to do or is intended to do. So now I thought at first that I might grab my little jackknife and try to at least breach this tomato to make sure it's not protected against infiltration. Sometimes the skin is something that the worms can't really penetrate, and if there's no place in the skin where there's a breach, then there will be no worm action on that food until such a time that you provide them with access. So I did have a number of napkins that I really wanted to do away with over here. So I'm kind of cramming them in here. I've got a paper towel here as well that's pretty soiled. But you know what? Let's not forget that we've also got some moldy bread to include down here. And that's going to make up their delicious meal. I've got my grit here. I'm going to throw in a little bit of grit. I was starting to wonder if it was the table, if it was my bench making that noise from me bumping into it or moving it around. I think it might be a dying battery in the detector, so I'll have to check. So I definitely see a little flying insect. I don't think there's a problem going on here, but we have been pretty diligent about adding some mosquito dunks material into systems where we see any sort of flying insect activity. So that's what I'm sprinkling in here now. In the past, I always used to follow the manufacturer's recommendation on how to prepare that stuff, which is to put it in water and then use that water to try to counteract the presence of flying insects. But more recently I've been thinking that maybe we can add it in a little bit more of a concentrated form instead of diluted into water, and then maybe it would be a more robust insecticide. So I do have just a few more pieces of paper here, which I figured maybe we would spread out across the top surface, because as you saw when we first came in here, this is a fairly popular bin for the worms to spend time out on the surface. And I just wonder if that might have to do with the top covering being what it is, totally dark underneath it. A lot of my systems are covered in translucent plastic, allowing it to become a little bit illuminated during the day and maybe preventing worms from wanting to be there. But here in the darkness, the worms are apparently pretty comfortable being out on the top surface of the material pretty much at any time, never feeling put off by any sort of bright lights or anything like that. So a little bit more dry or semi-dry stuff. Like I said, this prepared bedding of mine is prepared with moisture, so I figured maybe we would do what we've been doing in a lot of my systems, top coating with some additional bedding materials just in case the the rope and twine isn't really cutting it for the little guys, we would provide them with just a little bit more, which is always a good thing. And the worm bins, you always want to be generous with the bedding, and the worms will thank you by providing you with beautiful castings, and I guess the bin itself will thank you by allowing itself to be a lot more manageable. So I've got to go hunt down which of my detectors is making that noise, because it's driving me bananas. Then I got some stuff that needs cleaning up, putting away, but I'm not going to waste your time with all that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully. But don't be dishonest. If you didn't like it, whatever. Give it a thumbs down. But hopefully you did like it. And if you did, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.